Hello everybody and welcome back to Tunes Reviews. Thank you all for being here with me today. If you are not already a subscriber, please hit that subscribe button. It's free, helps me out for free, which is nice. Helps us so we can push out more content. And hit that notification bell so that you can see when we have new content that we're pushing out weekly, at least 3 to 4 videos for you all to enjoy. Today, we're gonna take another introspective look into a fragrance and a fragrance house that I absolutely love and adore and have great admiration for, and that is the house of Kerosene. Now, Kerosene's creative director and perfumer is John Pegg, who is the ex-fragrance reviewer from back in the day when there was only like 15 of us all together. And John is a lovely, lovely human being, very, very soft-spoken, very artistic, and he had an affinity for building things with his hands like motorcycles, and worked in a machine shop and loves all things mechanical. And I think you can see a lot of his inspiration coming from that background, you know, the Detroit background, Motor City. There's a lot of this really beautiful, almost mechanical aesthetic coming along from his bottles, which quite literally back in the day, I don't know if it's true now, but back in the day he would paint his bottles the same way that you would paint a car with automotive paint. And there is those metal plaques on the bottles that are very evocative of this rustic do-it-yourself aesthetic, with the letters being almost like they were chiseled in with a nail, which I think is very, very cool and very interesting and very different. Speaking of things that inspired John, I think that there's quite a bit of this 80s aesthetic that comes along with a lot of his perfume, just naturally in the indie world of perfumery that he has cultivated for himself and a name for himself. It really, really reminds me of things like The Cure. When I listen to The Cure, there's this really beautiful quality of nostalgia and this vintage quality. Even though I wasn't born until 1991, I have daydreamed and thought about what it would be like to grow up in an era like the 80s as a teenager, because I love a lot of things that have come out of the 80s, like 80s music and 80s films. And I really do find that there is a quality about John's work that has that vintage vibe that I pick up on, in the same way that I smell his fragrances, and the same way that I listen to a song from The Cure, I get the same emotional reaction. And for me, John's first fragrances that he came out with, I tried them as they came out. I was privileged enough to try things like Creature, which was a mint-based fragrance that he had that he could no longer create at this point. I had tried Rude Elements as his first release, and Santalum Slivers and Fields of Rubus was one of my first purchases that I had made for buying a fragrance from his line. Copper Skies was my favorite when I first tried his line, and out of his first few originals. And at this point now, there are so many fragrances that I own and adore and have great admiration for when it comes to how John has cultivated this really beautiful indie house name and done it kind of all on his own in a way. I feel whatever it is that he is trying to convey through his fragrance emotionally, and that's a really rare experience to have. So for me, there are fragrances that are absolute must-haves from his collection, especially as of the last, I want to say, 6 or 7 years, or maybe 4 to 6 years. Things like Unknown Pleasures, which I'm here to talk to you about today, hold such a deep and special place in my heart. And Follow, which I'll do its own review, an introspective look, the same way that I'm doing Unknown Pleasures, because it deserves its own. And as recently as trying Blackmail, which is also another one that's made a name for itself on its little shelf of nostalgia for me, along with Follow and Unknown Pleasures. But today, I want to talk about this beauty, Unknown Pleasures, which I'm not going to give you a full-blown note breakdown, but To my nose, this is essentially a lemon Earl Grey tea with maple syrup. A lot of people get like lemon pie or a lemon cake. I specifically get a beautiful, cooled lemon Earl Grey tea with just honeycomb and maple syrup, and I absolutely fell in love with this fragrance when I first tried it. So this brings me back to when I first visited New York City. I had gone with a very good friend of mine and my cousin Michelle, I want to say about 7 years ago. And we went to Min, New York, and I met Olya, and I met Steven from Redolescence, and Igor. And we met up and we did a couple reviews together and smelled some things together. And it was my first time trying Unknown Pleasures at Min, New York, where I was also meeting these wonderful people and trying all these new niche fragrances that I hadn't had the privilege of trying because I grew up in upstate New York, you know, around Rochester, not just upstate like Poughkeepsie, I mean upstate, where there's not really a whole lot of availability to these more indie or niche fragrance houses, and there's certainly not any boutiques around like a Saks Fifth Ave or anything like that. So, you know, you have to order everything to sample, and I got to experience pulling this off of a shelf at a specifically at a niche fragrance counter at Min, New York, and I got to experience it for the first time while cultivating these memories. And I have had such an affinity toward that maple syrup note my entire life because it reminds me of being at my grandfather's growing up. All my cousins and I were around the same age, and we would go out to the backwoods, the pine forest, and go camping, and we would experience camping together on a tarp, open-faced tarp, and feel the briskness of the night and have the fire going, licking at our feet with nothing but just a little metal griddle that we would put into the fire pit to make homemade pancakes and brew coffee in a little percolator and sausage links and bacon on for the breakfast for the morning after. So we would be covered in pine sap and pine needles and just have that cool autumn air blowing all that leftover smell with the smoke coming toward us at night. And that's really what I get out of this fragrance. This fragrance is very special to me. It creates a very, very nostalgic picture for me, and I have cultivated some really beautiful memories while wearing this. So now that I've got that all out of the way, let's get into the actual breakdown of how the fragrance functions. Unknown Pleasures is a gourmand, undeniably. It is a fragrance that you're gonna have to enjoy those yummy, ooey gooey facets of smelling like food. There's no getting around that, I don't think. It is light in the sense of how it wears. It's not super heavy. It's almost like a meringue or a cream pie. However, the longevity is great. I'm getting at least 8 hours out of it, and the projection is pretty moderate, so decent, not awful, not great, in between. But I think that this is a fragrance that is meant for those people that love that indie feel, like you're basically picking up some kind of vintage record that you've been on the hunt for the longest time, and you finally found it, and that overwhelming sensation of accomplishment and happiness just rushes through your body. That is exactly what I experienced while I'm wearing this fragrance, and it is something that holds so many beautiful memories of me longboarding with friends, or just experiencing going to new places and cultivating a really beautiful, almost haven of memories, and I absolutely adore it for that. But this is something that I think that you could wear anytime, any place, day or night, on a date, casually by yourself with your friends. You just have to like gourmands, and that's all it comes down to, or at least enjoy this vibe of sticking out in a very positive way, and feeling like you're wearing a fragrant, the equivalence of a vintage record. It's a very, very cool house. I love Kerosene, and I hope that you're all a little bit more interested in checking out the house if you have not already, because it's just such a beautiful and welcomed house as far as perfumery goes in my book. And I wish nothing but the best for John as it continues to have success with his house. I hope you all enjoyed Unknown Pleasures. It's been a pleasure to be with you. Pun intended. Boy, that was a dad joke, huh? And I hope you're all happy and safe and healthy out there. I look forward to seeing you all soon. Bye, everybody.